Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Tuesday, happy New Year's Eve, and happy, Championship Tuesday, I hope, for everyone out there. If not, hey, tough luck and 364 more days to get ready for the next one. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is indeed a great day to be great, and it's a great day to still continue to break down some of the utilization changes, as well as, recap some of the, more sheeshy moments of championship week. Of course, I cannot do this alone, and accordingly, I am joined by the one, the only Dwain, the Rock McFarland. What's going on, champ?
What is up? Yeah, Ian, I got to hear how your championship weekend went. Mine went really well. I beat Friedman in the Content Creators Guillotine League, the inaugural version of that. So, it's always good to have the first one. Everybody always remembers that first one. Second one, who knows? The last one and the first one. So I'll take it. I know how hard it is to win something like that because we start off with 18 teams. So that was nice. Flex leagues, man. I hated my draft. I was drinking beers. You and I thought my team was pretty bad. Ian stepped in, drafted a couple of rounds for me while I drank a few more rounds. That won. We won the championship, So shout out to Jake Seeley over at The Athletic for putting that on. Also, Ian, I won my Dynasty League, so that was nice. And finished 500th out of 500 with my BBM5. One bullet that I had. I somehow managed my team to finish dead last out of the 500 teams that made it through. But hey, I'll still take it. Underdog, we appreciate those flat payouts. It was nice. Didn't make a difference like in the bottom 100 places.
I got the OG Home League dub, third time since I believe we started in 2008. So that one, personal spot in the old heart. That one feels good. Had my first ever auction victory in a nice little league with Drew Davenport. So I can now hold that over Drew's head, for the next 11 months. Got to love that. Love you, Drew. Looking forward to playing cards here soon. However, though, Dwain, I did have a bit of a sheeshy outcome myself. I lost to freaking Sherm himself by less than 1 point on that last freaking Jawan Jennings catch. The corner was playing 15 yards off. I saw it coming. It happened, and I got to have a little hissy fit in front of my in-laws. So that was great. I'm sure they think less of me now. And it was a good reminder that fantasy football can sometimes bring out the worst of us. But Dwain, I don't know. Yeah.
I haven't heard that one in a while, Hart. It's good hissy fit. You got to get one of those in every now and then, a hissy fit.
I had that, my two worst moments were probably, and it was okay. I just maybe said a bad word or two, but I had that last night. And then as Michigan fans remember, Donovan Edwards, couple long touchdown runs against my Buckeyes a couple years ago. Was watching that one with the family, and a beer can went off the wall, but it was my wall, to be fair. So I think I was allowed to do that. But yeah, man, hey, as always though, we are going to watch the film and get better. I'm sure you guys had some tough ones as well, but that's why we play the game, for the love of the game, Dwain. Don't forget, we love this, even though sometimes it does make us want to tear our eyeballs out. So let's accordingly try to continue getting better with a breakdown of Monday Night Football, because those Lions took down the 49ers 42-34. Obviously didn't have anything to play for, but that did not stop Dan Campbell and company from trying to bite those kneecaps all game long. Jared Goff, 303 yards, and not one, not two, but 3 touchdowns. Now has a career high 36 scores. However, Dwain, we are lucky because I did see some screenshots out there. Some poor souls lost their fantasy championships on those final kneel downs from Goff, man. I can't think of a worse way to go out.
No, man. Can we just get rid of those? Can we get rid of the negative fantasy point for the kneel down? The kneel down is described as a kneel down in the play-by-play. So we could have technology that could actually figure this out and say, we're just not counting that. Why should that go against the quarterback? And man, now there's the new version of it, which we saw from Justin Herbert, the week before, that's like a -5 for every kneel down because he's back there trying to hold the ball as long as he can, kind of out of a pistol type thing. That was even worse. That nearly cost me my Dynasty League. So the week before, I ended up having a tight win, but I was definitely gonna tweet about blaming the Justin Herbert crazy kneel downs, which were more than just 1 yard. But yeah, we can get rid of this, guys. We have technology. It is described that way in the play-by-play. Let's get rid of negative points for kneel downs. Let's start a movement.
That should be our 2025 movement, Dwayne. I'm with you. No more rushing yards lost on kneel downs, at least in fantasy land. We're not taking points away for sacks, but we're taking points away for kneel downs. Give me a break. Otherwise, Jahmyr Gibbs, another awesome game, buck 17 on the ground and a 30-yard touchdown that clinched it. Also caught, 4 passes for 46 yards. Now the only player in the NFL with at least 70 yards from scrimmage in every game this year. Absolute dog. Jameson Williams, 2 touchdowns, both of which were of the Ben Johnson trick play variety. Not sure if we can keep even calling them trick plays at this point, just kind of the Lions everyday playbook, but had a cool counter rush and then caught a hook and ladder from Amon-Ra St. Brown, now up to over 1,000 total yards and 8 touchdowns this season. Turns out J-Mo is in fact quite good at football. Speaking of our one true sun god, though, caught 8 of 10 targets for 60 yards and a score himself. And also, Dwain, someone who has quietly had a pretty nice second half of the season, Sam Laporta caught 6 of 8 targets for 64 yards and a touchdown. No, maybe not overall tight end one numbers, but hey, it's still going to be tough next year, even as, relatively disappointing as this year was. Going to be tough to rank more than 5 or so guys ahead of him.
Yeah, still a very young player, resides in a really strong offense. And we want to make bets on players like that, Ian, because we don't know how the season's going to go. We don't want other players to get injured. But what does Sam Laporta look like if Amon-Ra St. Brown suddenly misses 4 or 5 games? He could be the tight end one for that stretch. He's in a situation now where it's like George Kittle with the 49ers. There's just a lot of weapons here. It's a team that can also run the ball. So it's going to be a challenge. But yeah, he's too talented on too good of a team, to not still look at him as that mid-range kind of tight end one. That's really what he's been down the stretch. He's given you 10.4, 18.1, 14.3, and 18.4 fantasy points over the last 4 games. That's a 9.3 utilization score. So staying on the field, not getting the heavy targets like we saw last year, but still a strong target share for a tight end. And again, young, ascending player still. So we definitely want to be in on guys like that.
Speaking of stud Iowa tight ends, George Kittle himself caught all 8 of his targets for 112 yards and is the tight end one in PPR points per game this season. So as great as Bowers and Trey McBride have been, I'm sure we're going to have all sorts of offseason conversations about which one of them should go first. Hey, George Kittle still certainly proven capable of being the best of them all. Of course, needed Brock Purdy to have a big game to do that. And accordingly, man, he was lights out, particularly in the first half, wound up finishing with 377 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2 unfortunate picks out there, but hey, also chipped in a rushing score. Unfortunately, though, Dwain did suffer a right elbow injury, which Shanahan described as a nerve thing. Not a doctor. Don't love hearing that's a nerve thing. So We'll see what happens there. They're going to get some tests done here on Tuesday. Would imagine his regular season, and obviously they're eliminated. So would imagine his 2024 season is over. But otherwise, man, the real star of the day for the 49ers was Deebo Samuel. No. Isaac Rendo. No. Ricky Pearsall, Dwain, 141 yards and a touchdown. He had 190 yards and 1 touchdown total coming into this one. And yeah, just say this best for Championship Sunday. What a guy.
Yeah, Ricky Pearsall, coming, Marvin Mims, these guys coming through, on a Championship Sunday.
Clutch.
So if you happen to have them in your lineup, which you probably didn't, if you did, yeah, let's see a screenshot. That would be pretty sweet. Now, best ball lineups, Ian, that's where it came through. It's like you mentioned, it only took Brandon Ayuk, going out for the season. It only took them Deebo Samuel completely falling on his face. There's CMC getting hurt, being gone. And suddenly we end up with Ricky Pearsall with a 29% target share in week 17 with 28.7 fantasy points. And what's funny is, dude, this was a huge weekend for wide receivers. We had so many wide receivers with multiple touchdowns, over 100 yards. I mean, it started off right away with T. Higgins. T. Higgins on Saturday went absolutely nuts. And I thought, man, if you don't have Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, there's no way you're winning, the BBM5. Then just multiple quarterbacks just ended up going off over the weekend. Pearsall, one of the wide receivers that also got in on that action. So yeah, good to see him as a rookie finish this way. It'll be really interesting to see what the 49ers do this offseason, Ian. Obviously, they just extended or got Brandon Ayuk back under contract, so we know he's going to be there. But will they potentially do something with Deebo? I don't even know what the trade value is on Deebo. This is his worst season as a pro. Now, he could be playing with an injury or something we don't know about. Maybe another team would still see him as a guy they want to trade for. You got George Kittle getting a little bit older. I got the injury question with Purdy. But if for some reason, we had 1 or 2 weapons leave, Pearsall, first-round pick at the end of this year, could suddenly be a guy that we're looking at in fantasy drafts next year and thinking we like it. But again, you still got Juwan Jennings there as well, so it's just still really crowded.
Regardless, was good to see some flashes again from the first-round rookie. So talent clearly is there, but yeah, only one ball to go around in the year 2024. We'll see about 2025 here coming up, but I don't think that rule is going to be changing. So that was your Monday Night Football breakdown, everyone. I do have, a good bit of news to go through, just in general, and also for you Week 18 savages out there, still for some reason fighting for championship glory. Good luck and everything, but man, that is just a weird choice by you. So getting to that with the, just overall kind of team motivation, we did have Bills head coach Sean McDermott say Josh Allen is going to play, but essentially just to extend his consecutive start streak. It will be a limited amount of time. They have nothing to play for, so yeah, keep that in mind. Also, Commanders head coach Dan Quinn does say the Commanders will play to win at Dallas. He actually said the seeding is important to them, so that's good for them. Panthers head coach Dave Canales said Bryce Young and the starters will play. I don't know why they wouldn't, but that was something that was a news item. Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa's status is still in the gray area, firmly in the unknown per head coach Mike McDaniels. Could be another start for former Pro Bowl QB Tyler Snoop Huntley here. However, Dolphins are optimistic that Jalen Waddle will be able to play, which, yeah, good news there. Titans head coach Brian Callahan is pulling a joker, breaking off, the pool sticks, and is going to let Will Levis and Mason Rudolph play this week. We'll see, if either of them can play bad enough to hopefully secure the Titans' number 2 overall pick. Meanwhile, Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin said he really hasn't paid much attention to, the reality that if the Ravens beat the Browns, Steelers won't have anything to play for. So we'll see what happens. But Tomlin, I think he's a bit more of that Dan Campbell breed, where I would probably just expect the Steelers to play 60 minutes of hard-nosed football. At running back, Adam Schefter, unfortunately, guys, has reported that he would be floored if Saquon Barkley does play in Week 18. Eagles have nothing to play for. They got him over 2K. Does not seem like he will be actively going for Eric Dickerson's rushing record. Meanwhile, Vikings running back Aaron Jones, dealing with a quad contusion, should play on Sunday per head coach Kevin O'Connell. Ravens running back Justice Hill should be good to go from his illness and concussion. And Andy Reid clarified that Isaiah Pacheco, despite dealing with a rib injury, should be available for the playoffs. Last note, Chargers wide receiver Joshua Palmer, dealing with a heel injury, is not expecting to land on IR. So still the Ladd McConkey show, but Palmer's been out there making a few plays as well. So that was the news, everybody. Now a quick word to our friends over at Game Time. Dwain, we both know there's nothing like being at a game in person, especially around the holidays. Personally, I've told you guys football and fights is my cup of tea, but hey, we're going to have baseball coming up here soon, and even going and checking out a basketball game can be a good time, especially you, Dwain. You got Luka Doncic playing down the road, man. Go check out that German just monster, man. He is freaking great at what he does. So if you want to do that, Game Time is my go-to for finding amazing tickets, and it should be yours too. But hey, not just for sports, also for concerts and shows too. I was actually scrolling through the Game Time app the other day, and I came across my new favorite feature called Game Time Picks. And let me tell you what, it is a total game changer. Game Time Picks curates your experience, showing you the best deals on great seats. Game Time makes it so easy that it's truly a no-brainer, people. Seriously, Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can find out for yourself by downloading the Game Time app, creating an account, using the code LIFE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LIFE, L-I-F-E, for $20 off. Download Game Time today, because what time is it? Game time. Sheesh is right, Dwain. It's the Sheesh Report presented by our friends over at Mike's Hard Lemonade, where we help show you, the sort of beyond the box score, near miss, tilting moments that quite possibly cost you a fantasy championship. So will this make you feel any better? No. Will it make you feel worse? Probably, but we're going to talk about it anyway, Dwain. So first, let's get two players who were tackled at the 1-yard line and unfortunately failed to score a touchdown on the same drive. The leaderboard includes Amir Abdullah, who had 2 on the same drive. More importantly, though, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Joe Mixon, Jalen Warren, Michael Carter, Jamar Jefferson, Devonta Smith, Malik Neighbors. Yes, could have been an even bigger day. Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Daniels, and Michael Penix. But really wanted to focus on Chase Brown, because this was one of the games that really could have been so just big for everyone out there, but unfortunately wound up being one of his bigger duds of the season, because first of all, that was not his only time he almost scored. He actually had 2 other carries where he was tackled at the 2-yard line and then did not score a touchdown. And in case you guys forget, when Chase Brown did get tackled at the 1, it was actually by his own accord. He chose to slide down at the 1, thinking he could ice the game. Bengals said, screw all that. Sneak the ball in for the touchdown the next play by Joe Burrow. And, oh yeah, Chase Brown also hurt himself on the play. So, Dwain, we were literally about 5 yards away from Chase Brown having 3 touchdowns to his Week 17 box score, and he hurt himself. Other than that, though, what's to worry about?
Well, that one personally hurt. He was on my BBM5, the one bullet that I did have in there. So yeah, that was I was actually taking my mom out for her birthday dinner. Had one eye though, not gonna lie, over on the Bengals game, and I saw this all unfolding, and I couldn't believe he was hurt on top of all of it. So to add injury to insult, literally, that is what happened, and we didn't get him for the for the overtime frame. So Could have got the extra frame, might have made up for it. Might not have been a big deal then. Maybe you catch 3 balls or something like that. Herbert came in and actually played pretty well himself. So that's the one thing we'll have to keep an eye out on here. What does Khalil Herbert's role look like? The Bengals, we know, are playing. They need some help, but they've got to win on Saturday to get into the playoffs. So whenever they play, they won't really know what's happening, so they'll be very encouraged to be playing hard, and we will probably see Khalil Herbert lead that backfield. They just don't have anything else. But yeah, it was very hurtful to me personally, Ian, that Chase Brown did not get that touchdown and then ended up injuring himself.
One of my articles last week, Dwain, was, my 7 just wishes for Christmas and the fantasy football finals and everything. And literally, my 7th and final wish was, please, none of this going down at the 1-yard line crap. Be like Devon Achane. Chase Brown was not like Devon Achane. So kids, PSA, don't worry about your team's success. Worry about your fantasy manager's success and score touchdowns if you have the chance to do so. You can put that one in quotes if you want, producers. Better ball touchdowns for the week. These are situations where the pass catcher was open enough to seemingly score a touchdown. However, the quarterback could not put it on them, and thus we were left sheeshing. So a bit more of the subjective nature, but one of those you kind of know it when you see it. And accordingly, guys, Bijan Robinson broke wide open down the sideline for what probably should have been a 65-yard house call. Unfortunately, Penix overthrew him, and we were left, saying sheesh. Also had Joshua Palmer from 44 yards out. Malik Neighbors from 41 yards out had to go back and catch the underthrow. Chigakonkwo, Kenny Yaboa. Aaron Rodgers just brutally missed this guy. Poor Kenny. Lav McConkey, Drake London, A.D. Mitchell, Kadero Hodge, and Jamar Chase. More guys who, again, very close to having that touchdown, but unfortunately could not quite get the accurate pass. So did want to point out here, Dwain, I listed 3 Falcons there. Again, Bijan from 67. We had Kadero Hodge from 6, who was getting force-fed randomly in that game for some reason, and Drake London from 13. Michael Penix Jr., we all saw the touchdown to Kyle Pitts. That was awesome. If their kicker could actually, do his job like any good American, they also would have won. So not saying, he was bad by any stretch of the imagination, but also maybe shouldn't be, crowning him for a 54% completion rate, 6.4 yards per attempt. What do you think, Dwain? Because I do think we sometimes have a tendency to overly freak out about these younger rookie quarterback performances. It was good. I see the arm strength and everything, but there were some misses there too.
Yeah, I was kind of frustrated with the whole broadcast, to be honest. Just kept going on and on, yet we're just continually going to not talk about the wide open throws that he's missing. The first one to Drake London in the back, end zone where he's running kind of the out or the crosser route. I can't remember the route, but he's running flat across, just flat out gets thrown across over his head. So yeah, I thought it was pretty problematic. I don't think Michael Penix, again, young player, don't want to say that he's not going to be any good. To your point, arm strength. That's really the only thing you can say he has right now over Kirk Cousins. This offense does not look good, in my opinion. The Commanders' defense did not play well. That was a game that was very winnable for the Falcons in a spot that they needed to win. And you can honestly say that it did come down to the missed throws by Michael Penix. That probably cost them game. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that could have cost them. It's a team effort, lots of plays that we could go back and review. Obviously, quarterback, that stands out to us more, Ian, because they touch the ball on every single play. They also have their hands on the ball for the biggest plays, which typically are passing plays during the game. So, yeah, I think Penix right now, it's pretty overrated, in my opinion, how well people think this guy's playing. I don't think he's playing very good at all. Again, not an indictment on his entire future, but it's about to say, is this offense really any better than it was with Kirk Cousins right now? Not saying they should have made the change, but it's pretty similar.
I think his ability, and we see the arm strength difference. That is the biggest thing out there, as you mentioned. I think that helps open up the underneath areas, make things a little bit easier for Bijan. Probably not a coincidence that he's had so much success over these past 2 weeks. But I'm with you, man. They had a blowout win over the Giants. Congrats. Do you guys want a medal for that or something? And then again, a game that was there for them to be won, unfortunately could not do so. So just kills me some of the, oh my gosh, people were ridiculing the Falcons for making this pick, and now look at them. Yeah. Now look at him, man. Yeah. What are we doing here? It's one of the best supporting casts in football. Dwain, I actually didn't tweet it out because I just thought there would be too much nonsense going on the mentions. But I've run my supporting cast rating throughout the season, just PFF, run blocking, pass blocking, receiving, and rushing grades. Take the average of that, everything against passing. Falcons were number 1, man. They have a lot of pieces there. And the fact that, again, Penix really is putting up very mediocre numbers, not ideal. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, 6.9 yards per attempt, fine. 9.3 fantasy points per game. You're definitely not excited about that. He ranks 33rd over this period, over the last 2 games. So it's fine. Don't want to overreact because he is young, but let's not act like he's out here saving the Falcons. He's not.
was killing me. Some of the like, oh my gosh, are Penix and Bijan just instantly this crazy good dual threat backfield? Because I guess some people just, declined to ever watch him play one snap in college and just kind of stuck to that 4.5 40 at the pro day. Penix can move, but like most, good quarterbacks, usually chooses not to. A bit more of a statue, I think, than, some people might let on, judging from the combine or pro day, whatever. Anyway, guys, that was the Sheesh Report presented by our friends over at Mike's Hard Lemonade. Wanted to give them a shout out before we get out of here, because the fantasy playoffs have indeed come to a close. And whether you took home a championship or got eliminated in round one, you worked hard to get this far. And we are here to remind you that Mike's Hard Lemonade is the reward for a hard-earned thirst. That championship will make sorting through waivers and dealing with Sheesh moments worth it. So will a cold, refreshing Mike's Hard Lemonade, because remember, people, hard days deserve a hard lemonade. All right, Dwain, now that we have put a bow on week 17, it is time for the utilization report presented by DraftKings, where we go through the risers and fallers in terms of who is being used and who is being not. And again, usually lean on your awesome, critically acclaimed, internationally award-winning or something like that utilization score, all sorts of goodness here. And how could we start it with talking about anyone else other than fantasy superstar Olamide Zaccheus?
Yeah. Looking at Zaccheus, and real quick, you guys want to go check out the article. We've got all these players outlined. I mostly focused on players that are on teams that I think are going to be in the playoffs. That way, if you're playing in playoff contests, we've got the guillotine leagues you guys need to go check out. We got the championship. We got the guillotines. Yeah. Make sure you go check out those. Plenty of playoff contests out there. So just making sure that I was really working through the players on those teams. And so for Zaccheus, since we've had Noah Brown leave the lineup, Ian, he had that brutal kidney injury, out for the season. He's really stepped up. So if you look at him, he had an 81% route participation last weekend. That was a season high for Zaccheus. And over these last two games, man, he's got an 8.2 utilization score. He is the guy that whenever the other team is looking, when the opponent's looking to really limit Terry McLaurin, Zaccheus has been coming through. And it could have been an even bigger day. He had another ball that was really right in the midst on a nice shot a little bit further down the field. Probably had a little bit room to run. Might have lost 3 or 4 fantasy points on that play alone. But over these last two games, he's averaging 23.7 fantasy points per game. Look at his utilization score sitting at an 8.2. Now, that's a small sample, but we don't mind leaning into small samples a little bit whenever we know there's a reason to, which is Noah Brown's now gone. So this guy's taken over a larger role. And if you look at him versus the other guys on the team, you can see here he's got the highest utilization score. Ian Jamison Crowder, like flashback, man, taking over the slot role. See his name up there. Caught a couple touchdowns last weekend. Not this weekend, but the weekend before. So Zaccheus really stepping up. But if we look at the comps for Zaccheus, again, based on the small sample, man, wide receiver 1 to 12. So guys that were wide receiver ones, 20%. This is based on the last 4 years of data. So there's a chance this guy in the playoffs, who knows how long the Commanders will stay alive, but he might be better than what people think. Now, most of his comps were wide receiver 2s or wide receiver 3s. 39% of them were wide receiver 2s. 27% were wide receiver 3s. So if you're looking for a way to get different, maybe you're going to build a team out that's a stack with the Commanders. He's a guy that I would really be considering, because I think he is a guy that a lot of like just normal folks won't click on. Sickos are going to be willing to click on his name and add him to lineups, but he's a nice way to differentiate your playoff lineup.
Also not guaranteed we see Dyami Brown back. He was missing this last week as well. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned the drop at the end of regulation. Also even had a second touchdown nullified on a holding penalty that, if you guys did watch that, pretty great Sunday night game, you saw some questionable holding calls really all evening long. So big game that could have been even bigger. And Dwain, accordingly, man, the overall wide receiver 6 during the last 2 weeks of the fantasy playoffs, just like, we all expected back in August. Let's talk about another young wide receiver getting upgraded, and that is Chiefs rookie Xavier Worthy, low-end wide receiver 2 for you now, Dwain. And why not? He has more fantasy points than Marvin Harrison Jr. this year, just like we all thought.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at Malik Neighbors, who's the wide receiver 11 in fantasy points per game, Brian Thomas, wide receiver 16, Lab McConkey, wide receiver 24, you kind of get these other guys like Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy, Marvin Harrison Jr. getting lost in the shuffle. But for Worthy, I mean, I think we got to give him a little bit of credit here, Ian. He is coming on at the end of the year. Right now, he's wide receiver 44 in fantasy points per game. But if we look at him over these last 3 weeks, he leads the Chiefs with a 27% target share. He's got an impressive 8.3 utilization score over that stretch. So slightly better than what we just talked about for Zaccheus. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's running all these fancy routes down the field and beating people the way Brian Thomas Jr. and these other guys are. A lot of it's scheme. They are scheming a lot of touches for Xavier Worthy right now, but it's the Chiefs offense, man. And you got Patrick Mahomes getting you the ball, so they're getting Hollywood Brown back in action. I'm actually wondering at this point, I know we do this sometimes, but is Hollywood Brown becoming part of the offense actually going to help this guy a little bit? Because now he's not having to play on the outside, trying to do maybe some things that he really just wasn't ready for at this level. And he's honestly playing that Rashee Rice role more now, just more on the inside, stuff closer to the line of scrimmage, getting a lot of screen plays. 32% of his targets over the last 3 games have come on screens. And while that's a cheat code and you wonder, is that sustainable over the long term for a guy, or when we start talking about Xavier Worthy as far as next year and what we think about him in fantasy, we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, because you've mentioned in the past, a lot of those may go back to Rashee Rice. But the bottom line right now is they're getting the ball to him. And he is a playmaker. He can do things in space. He is also a player, Ian, that I am seeing grow in confidence. Now that you're watching Xavier Worthy when he gets the ball in his hands, it looks different than what it looked like, 5, 6, 7 weeks ago. So yeah, he gets an upgrade. You mentioned it. Low end wide receiver 2 territory. And obviously, you got the Chiefs locked into the number 1 seed. They're going to be a favorite in the second game. So if you're looking at these playoff contests, Xavier Worthy is definitely a name to consider.
20 rush attempts this season too, Dwain. I mean, only Deebo Samuel with 42 actually has more among all wide receivers. So scheming him the football, lower ADOT recently. These last 2 weeks down to 4.1 average target depth. The first 15 weeks it was 9.4. But God forbid, Dwain, we just get more than one of those 30-plus yard, air yard, targets to him from Mahomes. Maybe they somewhat get on the same page. Could be a really big year 2 coming up for the rookie. So I think you kind of said it, though. Like, this is going to be a really tough situation to kind of figure out next year. Hollywood Brown only on a 1-year contract, so we'll see if he's going to be back or not. But I am seeing a lot of overlap between Worthy and Rice. We would think that court case from Rice maybe gets resolved at some point. Never know. U.S. legal system just seems to take their sweet old time with everything. Sweet. Keep doing a great job. You guys are so important to our country. Just don't ever work. Yeah. Kind of annoyed by this, Dwain. If you can't tell. But yeah, anyway, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, good weapons for Mahomes to have regardless. We'll see how that all sorts out. So more utilization goodness on the way, everyone. But first, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. Grab your favorite team's jersey and some snacks and head to the couch for another Sunday of action-packed football. You can get even closer to the action with my partners at DraftKings, because right now, all new DraftKings customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FantasyLife. The crown is yours. That's right. New customers get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins after betting just $5. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have a shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use the promo code FantasyLife and bet just $5 on any wager to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's promo code FantasyLife only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's talk about the hopeful comeback player of the year in 2024, Dwain. J.K. Dobbins obviously came back from a ton over the previous 2 years to even be out there in week 1. Then had another knee injury about halfway through this year, but returned in week 17 and gave anyone who had the gonads to start him a nice little boost in the fantasy championship. We'll see just how long Gus Edwards is going to be sidelined, but man, at least for 1 week, Dwain, certainly looked like J.K. Dobbins was back to being the running back, y'all, in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it didn't take long. Now, we didn't have Gus Edwards, so that makes this all a little bit tougher to decipher, but I think we all agree Gus just really hasn't looked that good. Dobbins earlier in the season definitely showed some flashes, so he's clearly their preferred guy. We saw him come back and lead the backfield this weekend, 53% snap share, had a 6.6 utilization score, scoring 15.3 fantasy points. So when you look at that, over the history of, the last 4 years, that's pretty much been, a low end to mid range running back too. So that's probably where I'll keep him right now heading into the postseason. Ian, I would like to think he could regain that upside that we saw earlier in the year, where really it was more of a low end running back 1. Some weeks we were talking about him as a mid range running back 1 as far as his profile goes. But this last weekend, we did see the passing downs go to Hassan Haskins. I know your favorite, not trying to trigger you, Hartitz, as well as Kamani Vidal. So I don't know that they'll keep that role. Earlier in the year, it was J.K. Dobbins actually getting a lot of the passing down work. So if they do decide to, shorten their bench, as they like to say, we see it in the NBA all the time. You have this big rotation, you get to the playoffs. It's like, we're just going to play our 6 dudes. Sometimes we see teams do this with their running backs in the playoffs. And I do think Dobbins is definitely the best guy. We know that the Chargers want to have an identity that does, keep the ground game involved. So Dobbins is a guy in the playoffs that if the Chargers are going to have success, I think he has to be a key part of that. Again, not going to immediately put him back in that running back 1 range, but definitely in that low end running back 2 to mid range running back 2 range. And again, obviously, guys, this is not ranking them against everyone else in the playoffs because he's going to be a running back 1 because there's not going to be enough players. But I'm giving you the historical context of how these guys have ranked over the course of a fantasy season when we've got all 32 teams available, just to give you a better idea. So yeah, Dobbins does get the upgrade.
Do you think the Chargers could be a bit of a dark horse here in the AFC, Dwain? I'm looking at their playoff scenarios right now, and if they win, beat the Raiders this week, seems reasonable enough, and the Steelers lose to the Bengals, they'd be locked in the 5 seed, going to face the Texans in round 1. Certainly not a team that's been playing their best football really all season long. If they can get that win, man, I know, Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, these would be favorites over the Chargers. But when you just look at the mix of the defense, the offense has scored like 74 points over these past 2 weeks. Justin Herbert, one of the very few quarterbacks who I do think can go to war with pretty much anyone out there. Maybe a little bit of a dark horse, Dwain? Come on.
Yeah, no, I think so, especially if the scenario you just talked about plays out. I mean, the Bengals could easily beat the Steelers, and then all you got to do is take care of business against the Raiders, and you get to play a team that's literally backing into the playoffs. I mean, the Texans could not look any worse. And this is not all just due to them not performing. I mean, they've had massive injuries. They've had a lot of things happen to them over the course of the last 3 weeks. Now they are getting some players back to health, so some things could balance out for the Texans. But honestly, I mean, other than the home field advantage thing, the Chargers are just playing better football right now than the Texans. Yeah. So it would not surprise me at all if you win that game. And then to your point, you got Justin Herbert, you got a coach, that's been there, that's been in the big games. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that you could like about the Chargers. And honestly, I know the AFC is strong, but the Bills are the team that would scare me the most. Like if I'm the Chargers, obviously the Chiefs are really good, but these teams all have holes in them, man. They all have holes, and I do believe it is the kind of year where any given Sunday, right, somebody could really, there could be a surprise that wouldn't be as big of a surprise that we might have thought like 3 or 4 years ago. Like if you upset the Chiefs 4 years ago, like you're pretty stunned. Like this year, I get it. They keep doing it, Ian, but man, it's been really close. Now, it was Patrick Mahomes' best game of the year last week, so they might be finally clicking just in time for the playoffs. If so, sorry, everybody else.
Sorry, everybody else, indeed. Again, not saying that they should be favored over the Chiefs or that they are my pick. Just going to completely, side saddle this take of mine right now. But wouldn't be surprised, guys, if the Chargers could at least make things a bit more competitive and not, charger everything up like they usually do when it counts. Let's go back to that Bengals backfield, though, Dwain. We talked about how sheesh of a performance it was from Chase Brown. Accordingly, we saw Khalil Herbert finish the game. Originally, I was thinking if Chase Brown was out, maybe we see a bit more of a split between Khalil Herbert and longtime backup Trevion Williams. But man, last week Herbert played 18 snaps, only 1 for Trevion Williams in the backfield. So you seem to be pretty confident that if Chase Brown is going to miss time with his high ankle sprain, really probably will be the Khalil Herbert show.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just such a better player. And we've seen Trevion Williams around for a while. Chase Brown had a little bit of an unknown to his game as, a guy out of the backfield as well whenever we lost Zach Moss, and they didn't feel the need to go to Trevion Williams. So I do think this is all there for the taking with Khalil Herbert. It's going to be up to him. He did get the final 4 drives of the game after we lost Chase Brown. So he took 100% of the snaps. He was also the guy getting all the rushing attempts. So it just wasn't a factor in a game where it's really critical to win. So we've kind of already seen it. Now, again, coaches can change their minds, over the course of a week, and they could do something weird and throw a wrinkle here. But right now, I mean, I haven't done my projections yet. I do that after the show on Tuesdays. I don't see myself projecting any less than like 60% of the workload right now for Khalil Herbert. And on a Bengals offense, I mean, I'm not going to put him to the Chase Brown level. I think that's kind of irresponsible, but somewhere, 15, 20 percentage points below that, I think he's definitely, got to project for at least that role. And he could actually just come out and take over the whole Chase Brown role. Now, it's a pretty tough matchup, with the Steelers. So, you got to look at the factors. But, man, yeah, I think Khalil Herbert could be in for a big workload this weekend.
By the way, everyone, schedule for the Fantasy Life show this week going to be, just rehashing some of our cooler conversations from the season on Wednesday. Thursday, though, we're going to be going through incentives and what exactly every team has to play for, because this is one of those teams, Dwayne, where, yes, everything is going to be on the table for the Bengals. If anything, the Steelers might be the squad taking their foot off the gas a little bit, but as I mentioned in the, intro earlier part of the show, kind of just don't really think that is Mike Tomlin's, in his DNA, if you will. So with, again, Chase Brown looking a bit iffy here. Even if he does play, Khalil Herbert could be someone who, again, we see get that boost and maybe do some, just good service for himself or maybe earning a role on this team in 2025. Zach Moss, is there any chance he comes back, Dwayne? I mean, neck on IR doesn't sound good to me, but do you know if there's any potential playoff comeback there?
I don't know, man. I've got to read up on it because we're going to be talking about some playoff contests next week. That's what we're going to be doing on the show. But I haven't seen anything about him being available to come back at this point.
I haven't heard a whisper about the dude. Everyone's so hyped about Chase Brown. I get it. He's been crushing it. But yeah, it certainly doesn't seem great for Moss. And accordingly, I mean, Chase Brown has had 20 plus touches in 7 of his last 8 games. You give that to Khalil Herbert, our next gen stats, rushing yards over expected God, if you will, over these past couple of seasons. Certainly could do some big things in it. In a Bengals offense that we know can score with anyone. So I do hope the Bengals make the playoffs, man. Out of anyone out there of who can just make it entertaining, great viewing experience for, anyone other than Bengals fans, certainly would be them. So good stuff. Now we have some utilization risers and fallers, but first, shout out Bud Light.
Even if you score, always stay hungry. No matter how hard you football, it's easy to Sunday.
Let's stick with the other side of that Bengals game, Dwayne, because we have Jaylen Warren slowly but surely putting forward some nice fancy numbers here for the better part of the last 2 months of action. No massive booms, although we did have a season best RB7 performance last week. But man, seriously, since week 10, he has only finished worse than the RB29 on 1 occasion. Yes, Najee Harris having some tougher matchups has been a factor, but also seen Warren get healthy. And accordingly, man, putting up numbers that I think we were more so expecting at the start of the year.
Yeah, he's giving you 13.2 and 16.2 over the last 2 games. If we look at the last month, which is how we calculate the utilization score movers, and we look at the guys that have moved the most at each position, either up or down, he is a plus 0.5 on a scale of 0 to 10. So that's a nice little bump, especially this late in the year when it becomes harder to move the score because the sample size is so large. But a lot of it, I think, does come back to the game scripts. Ian, I'm still not for sure what kind of role Jaylen Warren would have if we were in some of the game scripts we were getting earlier in the year from the Eagles. If we look at these last 4 games, been a lot of trailing scripts, losing by 14 or more points to the Eagles, Ravens, and Chiefs. So just some tough matchups. Now, that might not change this weekend. Joe Burrow and the Bengals are absolutely on fire. I don't think the Steelers defense, as good as it can be at times, is going to really be able to fully hold down that offense. So I think the Steelers could be forced into really playing a quicker tempo game, trying to throw the ball more, and so that could weigh back into Mr. Warren's favor again. I think this is still a 3-way committee and like a close game where we probably get an annoying, amount, just enough for each back that we can't totally get completely in on any one of them. But I do think heading into the playoffs, heading into this weekend, you're going to be playing against better teams. If I were having to pick, and I'm going on the Steelers, I'm having to pick a running back that I would want to go with for the playoffs, I think you do have to lean Jaylen Warren, just knowing that the competition level is going to move up. And over these last few games, that has forced the Steelers to throw more.
Obviously, disappointing, I think, for those of us that drafted a lot of him this year. Me, but we'll watch the film and get better. Dwayne, I will say with Warren, though, it's one of these things where, again, sometimes they have these early season injuries, and just over the course of an 18-week season, we tend to forget about it. He did suffer a grade 2 hamstring strain in the middle of August, which didn't help, the run out. And then in week 3, he suffered a knee sprain. So really was not the same guy for the better part of the first month or 2 of the season. Najee Harris is going to be an unrestricted free agent this offseason, Dwayne. So let's say the Cowboys give Najee $90 million for no good reason, and Jaylen Warren becomes the featured back in Pittsburgh. Look, he's a different player than Chase Brown. Doesn't have the same long speed. I think he's a bit more physical, not the same guy, but he has that same sort of rushing, receiving, pass blocking skill set where, honestly, if he was putting up similar numbers, just making the most out of 20 touches per game, if he gets the chance, I think Warren could have a similar ceiling outcome.
Jaylen Warren's better than Chase Brown. I mean, if you put Jaylen Warren in Chase Brown's role right now for the Bengals, I think he'd be scoring 25, 30 fantasy points per game. Chase Brown's been good. Jaylen Warren has way better vision. Jaylen Warren has way better feel for the game. I think he runs with more power. He doesn't have the same, to your point, long speed. But how often, honestly, have we even really got to see that completely show up for Chase Brown? Because some of the other things, he's definitely gotten better, as a zone runner, but I don't think he's completely there. I think Jaylen Warren, man, much better receiver out of the backfield as well. And that's been a plus for Chase Brown. So yeah, Jaylen Warren, if we didn't have Najee Harris in the picture, you're still going to worry if Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith is, he's always lurking. He's just hanging back there in the background, just keeps you second guessing yourself. He's going to find some way to get some tertiary player like two involved in the offense. So that would always be a little bit of a concern. But man, if Jaylen Warren ever did land in a role where he's getting 65, 70% of the snaps, I think he would make out big time on it. So yeah, I would be in on that. I was in on him this year, man, with all the questions. If you gave me that scenario, I don't know. You'd probably have to stop me. You'd have to be like, man, you're drafting him too much.
Really? I mean, hey, we'll see what happens. Obviously, CPAT is, always going to have his way in these Arthur Smith-led offenses. But with Warren, dude, he has been following that Austin Eckler-esque career trajectory from the undrafted, wearing number 30, kind of dual threat running back, where, as we saw with Eckler, Melvin Gordon left, and then he really got to take over. Najee is just a freaking warrior and an Iron Man, and I don't think has missed a game in his, NFL career other than maybe a mop-up week 17 action. So haven't gotten to see Jaylen Warren in that featured role, but again, at his best, one of the more efficient running backs in football. So a fantasy manager can dream, if you will. Let's talk about running back faller though, Dwain. Mr. Joe Mixon, just the RB 32.5 PPR points down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs. Yikes, finished behind Ty Johnson, Emmanuel Wilson, and Ramondre Stevenson during these final 3 weeks, and accordingly, he is a faller in the utilization report.
Yeah, when you look at Mixon, I do think, a lot of this really comes down to, when I do these upgrades and downgrades, I will tell you sometimes I don't think it's so much the utilization, and that's the thing here with Mixon. I think dealing with the ankle injury that he picked up now 3 weeks ago, he had another hip drop tackle. Remember, that's the same thing that happened to him early in the year. I think he re-aggravated that. And then you just had a tough stretch of defenses over the last 2 games. You've had to play against the Chiefs and the Ravens. In the last game, they basically shut you down because you've already got the playoff seed locked in. You're getting blown out. So what's the point in even playing Joe Mixon? So that, I think, artificially deflates the utilization in that game. And so those are all factors that have pushed to a minus 0.4 for Mixon. But the bottom line is what you mentioned earlier. The Texans don't look good right now. Joe Mixon doesn't look 100%. So it's certainly a guy that, like, if we were re-ranking everything today, which I will be, so I don't know why I'm saying if, whenever we re-rank everything today, he's just a guy that, honestly, if we look back a month ago, you and I were saying, hey, top 3. Like, how can you not have him top 3 every week? He's not in that part of the conversation anymore because we have just enough doubts. But at the same time, I don't think his role's really changed that much. And if I'm the Texans at this point, like, I'm just figuring out, how do I get this guy healthy? Because I need him and I need Nico Collins. Like, those are the 2 guys that can be difference makers for me in the playoffs. And so I want them to be healthy since I know that I'm in the playoffs. I've already basically backed in. Now I know DeMeco Ryans is already on the record saying everybody needs to be ready to play. So I get it. You want to try to get something positive going. But I could see them shutting Mixon down early this weekend. So I think he's risky this weekend, but I do believe in the playoffs as long as he's healthy. We'll see him back to that normal role that we saw before. But it could be against a team like the Chiefs, who just shut him down. So it's kind of tough.
Texans join the Chiefs, Bills, and Eagles as the 4 teams completely locked into their playoff seed. Texans, again, division winners, shout out, locked in as the 4 seed. They are not in a position to gain anything. So, yeah, please, guys, just keep Joe Mixon and Nico Collins and CJ Stroud and, of course, everyone else healthy if possible. Let's talk about a wide receiver riser, someone who probably made a lot of people some good money this week, Dwain. And honestly, he has been having a nice couple, just, I guess, stretch run here. Marvin Mims for the Broncos. We talked about him a lot in the Sunday night shows because about 2 months ago started getting some fun RB usage. However, it just stayed gadgety. We were getting the little Jordan Humphreys, Troy Franklins, Devon Baileys of the world more run as true route runners. Maybe that is starting to change though.
Yeah, I mean, his utilization score has moved up 0.6 points over the last 4 games. So he's definitely moving in the right direction. He had a season high 8.2 utilization score last weekend. He has a 5.1, though, over the last 4 games. So still not quite getting the playing time that we need. When I say still quite not, he's really not close at all. It's better than what it was early in the year, but a 42% route participation, Ian, over the last 4 games. So he's still in a part-time role. Exactly. Now, look, the rookie supermodel 2 years ago loved Marvin Mims, and one of the things it liked was that he could really win at all the different levels of the field. Not the most physical wide receiver, but has the speed and also has the ball tracking ability to get over the top of a defense. I think we just need to see some more of that. So we'll see what Sean Payton does when he's on the field, man. Basically just double cover the guy. He has a 30% targets per route run whenever he's out there. 71% of his targets over the last 4 games, Ian, have come on screen plays. So that's mostly how they're getting the ball. Obviously, we saw a big play this weekend that wasn't just of the screen variety. The guy can do it, but we still need more routes. So if you're thinking about best ball playoff contest, you're thinking about guillotine playoff contest, Marvin Mims is, I don't want to say like a last round dart. He's better than that. Like if you're building out a Denver stack and you're thinking that the Broncos are going to go all the way, I would say you're targeting Cortland Sutton first. The next guy I'm targeting on that offense, probably not a running back. It's probably not any other guys. I'm probably making it Marvin Mims. So you're going Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims. Those are the main guys that I would be interested on in that offense.
Good player, man. I don't know if he's ever going to be this, locked in wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, but hey, I think I kind of view him similarly as Calvin Austin. I know you like him as well. If he's your wide receiver 3/wide receiver 4, scheme up a few touches per game, really do think you could be doing a lot worse. And hey, both guys provide plenty of value in the return game as well. Obviously, again, last week against the Chargers was wide open deep, for a potential touchdown in the fourth quarter. Bo Nix underthrew that one. Bo more than made up for it with some of those plays he made against the Bengals. Not trying to hate on him or anything, but yeah, again, for a guy with 2 games in the last 4 with 100+ yards and a touchdown,
shades of
been bigger than that.
Shades of Tutu Atwell for me. I kind of feel like that's like his floor case right now. Like Atwell, and every time Atwell gets a chance to play, like if you have one of these other Rams receivers off the field, he does pretty good. Like he's not a wide receiver 1 or anything, but he's in that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 conversation. I feel like that could be the floor for Mims if he got to play in a role where he got 70-80% route participation. Probably to your point, the best fit would be on a team that runs 3 wide receivers all the time. Sean Payton's a guy that loves to change up his personnel on play to play. Like he likes to go heavy. He'll go to 3 wide receivers, then he'll run 4 wide receivers, then he'll run like 2 tight ends with 4 fullbacks. Like, so he does a lot of different things that keeps you from having that extra wide receiver, on the field, which is probably why they've been working him in at running back some, Ian, trying to give him some of those looks as well. But I think Marvin Mims, man, if he did ever get the full-time role, I think he could be a wide receiver too, but you got to land in the right scenario.
I do wonder, man. Peyton keeps bringing up this Joker role that he had Reggie Bush and Sproles play, and Craig Dulcich, for whatever reason, was the one getting the shout out. They weren't doing this running back stuff with Mims earlier on in the year. It really did seem to be something they put in starting around like week 6 or week 7 or so. God forbid we do start getting. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say Deebo Samuel. So just know I'm not going to say that. If he does somehow, Dwain, get these 30 to 40 carries, and then we're getting 80 to 90 targets, like that's the path, man. Like we do occasionally, like, okay, it won't be the high route rate. Might not ever be that. He weighs 177 pounds. Maybe they just don't think he can do that. But as you said, man, if he is at a 40, 50% route rate, but he's getting the 30% plus targets per route run, that could work.
Yeah, I mean, he could be a wide receiver 3. He upgraded to boom bust wide receiver 4 territory for me based on what he's done, over the last 4 games. And that's based on similar utilization players over the last 4 seasons. So all of his comps really came out in that range. But when you grade a boom bust wide receiver 4, guess what? It's a range of outcomes. And so there are a lot of guys that were, I say a lot, there's a smaller percentage that were wide receiver 2s, quite a few wide receiver 3s, then most of them were wide receiver 4s. Of course, you also have wide receiver 5s and 6s mixed in there as well. He's best right now, honestly, in a best ball kind of format, where you just don't have to pick the weeks he comes through with the big plays. I mean, we've just seen it in the last 4 games. He was wide receiver 12, then he was wide receiver 56. Then he was wide receiver 40. Then he was wide receiver 3. So, and that's what you're getting. You're getting a guy that could boom his way into the wide receiver 1 conversation any given week on the big plays. But whenever those don't come through, you're looking at a guy that's clearly outside the top 36.
Mims on the up and up, but our wide receiver faller is none other than Cooper Kupp. Dwain, wide receiver 96 in PPR points during the fantasy playoffs. Tyrell freaking Shavers, someone who I'm sure none of you have even heard of, had more fantasy points than Cooper Kupp over these past 3 weeks. Sorry, Tyrell Shavers and your friends and family if you happen to be listening to this. But yeah, man, I know, had the early season injury and he's old. I mean, look at him. He's so old, but really disappointing stuff from Cooper Kupp, Dwain.
Well, you do have to wonder, has he hit the H cliff? He's dropped 1.2 utilization points over the last 4 games, man. That's a ton. That is a huge fall. 12% target share. Utilization score 4.5 over the last 4 games. And Puka Nacua is just taking over the offense, man. All the easy looks that are just around the line of scrimmage that Kupp used to get that were run after the catch, those all go to Puka Nacua now because he's just better with the ball in his hands. Puka Nacua is basically a running back once you get him the ball in the flats. Cooper Kupp is not. So when you take away all that padding and now it's just down to, okay, you got to go win on your own, which I think Kupp's still capable of, but he still has to compete with Puka Nacua on those plays as well, who's in the prime of his career. And so I just think that that's a challenge. I think the question, Ian, is, are you willing to take on a guy like Cooper Kupp, in a playoff contest, guillotine league, because everyone's going to gravitate to Puka. But if you're trying to differentiate, do you think there is a chance that this has just really been, kind of we'll look back at it like, oh man, this was just a blip, for Cooper Kupp, and he actually ends up being the guy that goes, on a warpath for the Rams in the playoffs?
Not really, because even the games he was playing well, it's not like it was impressive. Like, could it happen? Yes, man. Anything can happen out here. They leave him uncovered. He scores a 60-yard touchdown. Okay, great. But no, I'm with you, man. Puka, it's not even close at this point who the wide receiver 1 is. Certainly been a fall off for Kupp. Not going to completely write him off, maybe ahead of next year. Again, get healthy, Cooper. But man, it has been rough. But Dwain, close out here with a quick look at the tight ends. I'm going to give you one segment, man. Riser, Okonkwo, Fall, or Dalton Kincaid. Talk it out.
Yeah, Okonkwo plus 0.8 in the utilization score. Again, that's really nice this late in the season with such a large sample. Who knew? The Titans. Come on, you guys know this. You watch this guy practice every day. We're just fantasy nerds, and we're out here telling you guys for 2 years that Okonkwo is pretty good. How do we know this? Because whenever he's actually on the field, he gets targets. And yes, some of them are schemed up. But guess what? When you scheme up targets for your tight end because they're good with the ball in their hands, that means you should probably just play them more anyway, because how many tight ends can we say that about? So Okonkwo does upgrade to low-end tight end 1 status. Lastly, Dalton Kincaid, man, just stuck in this rotation. Since he's been back, still hasn't reached a 60% route participation. Dawson Knox is really the guy. Kincaid's getting these targets in, but he also doesn't do anything with them. It's like catch it and fall down. This is like, I don't know, a terrible slot wide receiver that doesn't get any playing time. Really bad for Kincaid.
I can name maybe one Dalton Kincaid career highlight. Knows that time he just counted the defenders and did the cool first down signal. Not great.
He's going to take over for Ertz. He's going to be the new Ertz. Did he ever gain a yard of yak?
He's in year 2.
And he's not even big. He's a more slender tight end. He should be adding some yards, man.
Hey, let the record show Zach Ertz did, in fact, break a tackle last week. And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Truly, Happy New Year, everyone. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us in 2024. Many bigger and better things on tap here for 2025 and beyond. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, and for producer Kelsey, I am Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody, and go Buckeyes.